Hey everyone, welcome back to our live. We are resuming our mini series with Sakina Issa, a certified marriage and family therapist. So if you were here for season one, welcome back. Thank you for joining us again.
Hey everyone,
And
welcome back to our
sorry, hold
live.
on one second.
We are resuming our mini series with Sakina Issa, a
Oh,
marriage
there's an
certified.
echo over here. Sorry. So yes, so season two, we are going to basically build up on season one. Season one was about self growth and self improvement through the therapeutic lens. So, Sakina came in, gave us tips on how to open up, create space for self growth, and start that journey and how to deal with even feeling burnt out during that journey. Season two is going to be a build up on that. So, we're going to talk about a little bit more about relationships. So, sort of like the build up on how we then connect with other people. Today, we're going to concentrate on motherhood and guilt, a very common topic that reoccurs and comes up. So, we're going to navigate that today, and then you guys can stay tuned to our Instagram. Both of our pages will share the next two episodes that will be on a bi weekly basis. So, for today's topic, the inspiration was, and why we wanted to do it was I think, especially with social media, there's a lot of comparison in general, and then that too with motherhood. Like, I'm not even a mom, and I realize that there's so much stress and guilt around, whether it's mom shaming or just comparing what you're doing with your child versus what others are. And while it comes from a well intended space where you want to do the best for your family, it can often create a lot of stress and a lot of mental I guess, anxiety and stress about how you're dealing with your child, and that can have a domino effect. So, today we're going to tap into those topics and talk about how to recenter yourself once you do feel guilty, knowing that it's okay and that, mom guilt is essentially based on comparison, and that can be, taken away and peeled back. And then also traits in how we raise the future partners and friends for tomorrow, better spouses for tomorrow, better friends for tomorrow. So Sakina will help us go through all of that and introduce her background as well.
Hi, everyone. I'm so glad that you made it back. As Farwa said, I'm a marriage and family therapist. I'm located in Orlando, Florida. And today's topic is mom guilt. And I'm a mom of two. I have two little boys. So navigating that field is always so difficult. We have our emotions for reasons. They're supposed to be indicators for us, right? Sadness, why do I feel sad? What's happening? Happiness, what is going on so I can identify, what makes me happy. And guilt is no different. So there is a purpose to guilt. Guilt is to let us know that we could be doing something better. However, when it's constantly triggered, you need to sit with yourself and kind of say, okay, is this reasonable? As Farwa was saying, comparing ourselves to people online and Instagram stories and posts, it becomes overwhelming, especially for moms, seeing like, oh, somebody's baking cookies with their kids, or their kids are like so put together. Mine look like they're a mess. So um, you have to be kind to yourself as well. So I think this is such a great topic. So I'll let Farwa kind of guide us through it.
Thank you, Sakina. And yes, it's so true. Even though we know in the back of our head that social media is a highlight reel, when we're, I think, consuming it, we that filter kind of gets blurred out. So I guess let's start with traits. So, on the topic of sort of raising better partners, better friends for, the future, what are sort of the initial traits that kids begin to develop? What are the ones that sort of carry on to how they act as an adult in the future?
With traits, anything that your child sees, they will mirror. They are watching you like hawks. And although they are not articulate or put together, the way their mind works is amazing because in that stage of their life, what they're meant to do is just absorb. And so they are absorbing everything. They will see you cry even when you don't think they're aware. They will see you on the phone with somebody. They will, see how maybe there's something that you're lax on a rule for yourself, but you're very, strict with them about it. And so they are sponges. So really whatever you present to them, they will take in. And so with that knowledge, it's so important to be mindful. They are watching. What am I doing? How am I behaving? What do I need to work on? So with parenthood, a lot of the time, it's a great, life stage to start making the changes that you need to make as a person. If you see that, I tell my kids, they should make their bed in the morning, but then I'm struggling to do that too. Is that realistic? Do I truly value that, or is it something that maybe I can let go of? And it's like, they're not going to make their beds. And so you truly have to self-reflect and see what things are important to me, what things are not important to me. What am I willing to let go of? What am I not willing to let go of? In terms of traits, we want to make sure they're dynamic human beings, right? Sit with yourself. What do you find important? Maybe honesty is number one. Everyone can kind of put the traits in the order that they find it to be best. So humility is one, dependability is one, contentment. You want your kids to have ambition, but then you don't want them to go overboard, right? Life is all about balance. And so really presenting that balance to them at all times. I had a client, her son beat up a kid at school, black and blue. She's mortified. She comes in and she's like feeling guilty, right? Because no one wants to be that mom whose son beat somebody up. And those are obviously not things that she taught him, right? She's not teaching him at home like, oh, it's okay to fight. However, a child will react to their value systems. So the reason that he ended up beating this kid up was because this kid picked on a girl. And she had always taught him, you have to respect women, you have to respect your sister, you have to always treat them nicely, you should give them extra care. And so he was acting on his values. He was like, are you kidding me? How could he say that to her? Of course I had to defend her. And he just took it too far, right? So always reminding them that there is appropriateness. If you see something, this is how you should address it. And when you have like kids with siblings, it's a little easier because they're constantly in conflict. So with my boys, I'm constantly like, okay, now you have to come over here. You have to say sorry. You have to accept his apology. And it seems really, sometimes people might think that, okay, you're forcing him to say sorry. That's not right. And sometimes there is a line, right, where you cannot force your kids to say sorry or to do things that they're not comfortable with. However, when you are teaching them at home, you have that kind of authority to do so when it's with their siblings, right? Because you always want to foster that loving, caring relationship with them. So it's the best to kind of utilize that resource of that sibling in the family to say, no, you have to accept the apology. You also have to teach your kids to get over things, not dwelling in a situation or a feeling. And kids are actually already really good at that. You'll see like 5 minutes later, they're playing and they're moving on. So sometimes as adults, what's really great is we can learn so much from them because they don't have all the barriers that we've had growing up.
That's a really good point. And actually, on a slight tangent, based off of a point that you made, teaching kids to get over things, but also knowing that it's okay to feel feelings, essentially. What would you say is sort of the delicate dance and balance between those two?
So for like me, when I parent, I always have that conversation. I highlight the feeling probably because I'm a therapist and I know the importance of that, right? So I'll say to my son, "Oh, what did that make you feel?" "Oh, that made me feel angry. I don't know why he snatched the toy and he hit my face." And they get pretty bad. So I have two boys, they're constantly at it. And so then, I'll join them together. And sometimes I do the timeout thing too if it gets excessive, because sometimes it's like they're constantly hitting one another. They're constantly in battle, and you just need to separate them and have them understand that we cannot touch like that. That is not a kind touch, and we're not going to do that here. But highlighting their feelings, right? There is a reason for why they are behaving the way they are behaving. If they can articulate it, that's great. And if not, sometimes you need to be the detective. I saw that he hit you. Did it hurt? Is that why you're sad? Because you're feeling hurt. And they'll say yeah, or they'll nod their heads, and so if you keep on highlighting what could be the feelings based on, your own knowledge and your own awareness of feelings, they will then understand. I have a 2-year-old and he can already say, I'm angry, and he knows why he's angry. And I have a feelings wheel, and he'll just put the little pointer on the angry face. Mind you, he gets angry over a lot of things. Brings up anger, but he's aware of it. And his facial expressions totally match the picture. And that really helps. If your child is having difficulties with feelings, their feeling charts are amazing. Just looking at the different expressions, like, oh, can you make your face like that? When have you felt that before? And if your kids are like 4 years old, they'll be able to articulate stories and really engage in an activity like that.
Love that. Thank you. So I guess processing the feeling is a big part of it. And I think that also helps you get over it a little bit faster too, right? So what you said that you kind of the parents prioritize the traits that they start sort of instilling or enhancing in their child. Would you say that there is maybe like 3 or 5 that are like the first, like, is there such a thing that, like, based in science, like kids development, that there is the first like 3 to 5 traits that they start to understand or grasp, or is it just, all of them and you choose which one to instill?
It's basically what you personally think is the best. So what I sometimes I see couples who are, in their first stages of having their first kid, they don't know what to expect. Sometimes there's conflict because of different values, religions, races, and all these things. And what I kind of have them do is make a list, right? If you were a dynamic being, or if you could create a dynamic being, what qualities would they have? And then based on that, you have to be super aware. If honesty is, your top trait, when you interact and in the things that you do, you must have that trait yourself and highlight that trait, right? So sometimes it could be like those little, like, I'm 5 minutes away and you're leaving the house, right? And it takes 10 minutes to get there. So you're like, it's like a 5-minute buffer. It's okay. But your kids are watching that and they're seeing that. Or you say I'm on your way, and when you're just like grabbing your wallet and your keys and you're running out the door. So those are the little things that we don't really consider that they see, right? And so that they are very black and white, right? Like I had mentioned in the example, you don't behave like that with a girl, so I have to beat you up, right? So you're saying be honest, but you're lying. Sometimes I tell my kids they can't have sweets, after dinner or after a certain time, and they've caught me with like treats, and they're like, "But mommy, you said," and I'm like, "You're right. I did the wrong thing." And I'll put it away, but it's a reminder for myself that they are watching everything you do.
So would you say in an instance like that where, like, for example, you're, you know, teaching your child a sense of like not to have something sweet at night, But as an adult, you can differentiate which nights you have a sweet and which you don't, right? Because you already have like self-control built. So is that something that, like, for example, if any of the moms watching are thinking this, like, should I sort of control that habit, right? Whether it's like starting making my bed just so my child learns it, or stop eating dessert after dinner just until my child builds that. And then when they're old enough, I can go back to eating dessert after dinner or whatever. Like, is there such a thing?
Of course, and it's like the way you handle the situation, right? If you know that they wake up at, like, my kids, they don't sleep through the night still. They'll still wake up, they have to use the bathroom, they need water. So for me, I'm like aware that they can find me at any moment after they go to sleep. So, I need to be like, okay, if I'm going to engage in something that I've told them that they're not allowed, I do it. Like, it's kind of bad because it's almost like hiding it from them. But essentially, yeah, you're an adult. There is a difference between being adult and being a child. You're there to teach them. But if you feel guilty, right, when they come and they tell you that, is it because you're engaging in that and you don't want to yourself, right? But you have this habit, right? And you want to teach them to not develop that habit. So you tell them that, but then you're engaging in it yourself. So that's where that, like, self-reflective piece really comes in, because it's like sometimes we want to teach them things because we've seen how having that trait is a downfall for ourselves. So eating healthy, maybe it wasn't something that I was taught, but I want to teach it to my kids. But yeah, then I have to start, eating healthy too, and not keeping certain things in the home, and making that change.
Thank you. Yeah, that's so good. And it's so true. That's a good way to distinguish what kind of guilt are you feeling, right? Like, is it the difference between adult and child, or is it because you're also wanting to get rid of this practice? And so I guess in that way, kids can be they can be good accountability partners. So talking about traits, and then also the interest, like the part where it overlaps on parenting. So if as a parent, for example, you forget to like pick them up from school, right? It's like a one-time thing. Maybe it's okay, but how many times does something like that have to happen before, like, say, for example, you don't pick up your kid from school and they develop trust issues? I don't know if that's a real correlation, but if it's, for example, if it's something like that, how many times does it have to happen before, said child develops a trust issue? Like, is there a number between how many times you create a pattern almost?
So I think as adults, we know when something gets excessive, right? And as children, they know whether it's you're neglectful or you really made a mistake, right? So I would say, okay, one time, maybe once in a while, they recognize that. But beyond that, they know that, like, you're not organized with your time, you value other things, they will get angry at you too. I've had children say to their parents, like, you don't care, you don't come on time, you know. And nowadays there are cell phones and there's things like that. So it's very easy to be in touch with your child. I know that sometimes, there's traffic and parents don't necessarily get out of work in time, so their kids are at school a little bit longer, but you need to communicate that with your child. The thing is, they don't feel safe in the world, and when they have an expectation that, like, you're going to pick them up, it is very important to be there, because you do lose trust in people, and that is something that can develop. And it's something that you can carry into adulthood. And, even those slight things like, oh, I promise that if you achieve this, then I will get this for you. Or, like, if you behave this week, we're going to go out to ice cream. It's so important to follow through with things like that, because it does impact them. Because although it's not like a lie, in their mind it is, right? When you're not truthful, you're lying. And so you have to follow through on those things, because that does stay. And with their partners, with anybody who they kind of interact with, that will highlight the way they see the relationship. Because when that person makes one mistake, they will spiral and they will go like, oh, it can become like this.
Yeah, I guess it goes back to basic conditioning, right? Thank you for that. And then talking about when a mom does feel like, or I guess even a dad, right? When they feel like perhaps they've messed up or they feel guilty because of, they do fall into the trap of comparison or whatever it is that led them to feel like they messed up or they feel guilty. What are some tips on for the parent to like, recenter, realign themselves, and then also, just important things that for like not like why like the importance of why a parent should also take care of themselves and they shouldn't feel guilty for that, whether that means you take a day at the spa or it's you go to work for a few hours or whatever it may be that serves you. And just talking to the parents out there for again just realigning once you do feel that guilt, and then why a lot of things don't need to fall into the guilty category.
So I think the thing is with that is like it depends on a situation, right? Do you feel guilty because, you work a lot and you have to work a lot, right? So understanding like what position am I in? If you are very dedicated to your work, it's very important to you, you have to focus on it. Be mindful that you're not overdoing it, right? That when you have the time to spend with your kids, that you are. And kind of what you mentioned as far as, taking that time for yourself, you have to remember that you're a human being too. And before you had kids, you had a life. And before you had kids, you used to take care of yourself, right? And so it's very important. And that's why, we have, spouses or family that can help with the kids. And if you're a single mom, it's very difficult, but maybe investing in the babysitter once in a while, so that you can get things done, or family and friends so that you can have a minute. Because I always tell my clients, you have to fill your own cup up first, because then you have nothing to give. And you'll notice if you're not fulfilled and if you don't take that time, if you love yoga or if you love, traveling a little bit, it's okay if you leave your kids for the weekend. We feel guilty. We shouldn't leave them. They need us. As long as you've made the proper arrangements, it's okay. But kind of just going back to that guilty feeling, why is it coming up? Taking that time for yourself is so important. Sometimes it's like, okay, well, I wish I could bake cookies with my kids. All right, then I'm going to plan that. But when it's seeing these things that are unattainable, knowing that, okay, this was staged for Instagram, this was staged, this is content creation, this is not real life, right? Like my kid always has a stain on his shirt. No matter what I do, there is something that's going to get somewhere. And that's okay. And you know what? Honestly, I'm not trying to do laundry for days. So he's going to stay in that shirt. It's not so bad. Until it does get so bad that there's water everywhere and like then I'll change him. But uh, being mindful that like Instagram is not something that you compare your life to, right? And really thinking like, where is this guilt coming from? Sit with it, understand it, and then execute. If you're comparing your kids and you feel guilty because you understand that they're two different personalities and they are two different people and they will not achieve the same things, you need to understand that and then go to the child and say to them, I'm sorry. Sometimes I get carried away and I forget that you're two different people because I just see you as like my children, you know? Um, and showing them like things like that is so important. And it's so good for yourself because you're doing the right things and taking the right steps, right? And understanding that just because that they're your children doesn't mean that you're not accountable for your actions. I think a lot of times parents won't take accountability and they use the excuse that I'm the parent. Uh, But if you're not modeling good behavior and saying sorry and apologizing and listening openly to what they have to say, then ultimately you're teaching them like against the things that you want to teach them.
That was a really good point, because you would never think that talking to your kids or admitting your mistake to your kids or being vulnerable in front of them is a part of dealing with that quote unquote mess up or guilt, right? And I think that's so good. And like you said, it's so, again, just going back to defining what's making you feel guilty, and then saying, is that really important to me in my life? Is that the standard that I'm living up to? Like, who am I really answerable to, right? Like, it's sometimes we lose track of that. Um, and then, so I guess again, it comes back to just self-reflection and thinking about it for a moment and just taking a minute to recenter and realign.
And you need to take a minute, take that minute. It's okay to tell your kids, like, okay, mom needs a break, dad needs a break. I will be back. I want you to sit right here. When you come back, they might not be there, but you got your minute.
Perfect. I think that's definitely a good reminder for everyone. So kind of towards the end of our conversation, we want to talk and go back into sort of, and I think you have a really good position for this topic because you are a marriage and family therapist. So you see both sides. You see people in relationships, whether it's, their family relationships or romantic relationships. And then you also see children. So, what are some good ways to navigate and breed, if not obviously not like perfect, but like optimal friends, spouses, partners for the future? What would be some of your tips, your advice, the traits that parents can think about when trying to do this?
Again, I think first you have to look at yourself, right? What are your values? What do you want to instill in your kids? What are you able to admit your own mistakes? Are you able to admit your own shortcomings? So that's number one. Being mindful of the way that you're parenting them, right? Your tone. When we get angry at our kids, there is a lot of consequences. It makes adults that are less empathetic. They have poor adjustment. They're aggressive. They can have a lot of mental health issues down the line due to it. And so it's really, really important to be mindful of how you're communicating. Recentering yourself if you need it. Our kids are like meant to trigger us. Like that's why they're created. They're created to get on our every last nerve. And every parent out there can understand it's like it's extremes. It's like you have so much love for this thing, and then you also want to kill it sometimes. And you don't, you're torn and you're in a chaotic state. So really bringing yourself back to center, whatever that means for you and however you get there, but making sure that is a part of your life. I always love, telling people to journal, meditate, yoga, these things. Like, I feel like we say them all the time, but they're so important. And if you engage in it, you'll understand. You have to try, right? But I think really raising a dynamic human being goes back to like raising yourself, being aware of the shortcomings that were given to you and how you need to work through them, and making sure that you don't put that on your kids, and being so aware that these are the things that I didn't appreciate when I was growing up. These are the things that I did appreciate. Okay, how can I make someone like better, right? And I think with each generation, that's what happens, right? When we have these parents who are aware, they'll be like, oh, I didn't like this and this. And of course, everybody makes mistakes. That is life. Life is a series of mistakes and corrections. So you're going to make mistakes. Nobody's perfect. And being aware of that too. but knowing that with each generation, it will get better and better and better.
Thank you. That was like the perfect way to wrap up the whole conversation. And I can say from personal experience, even though I'm sort of in this lifestyle and wellness space and I hear all those tips, they're definitely good reminders. And even things like journaling, it's so funny because you say it until you try it, you don't know. I personally just never thought it was my thing. And recently, like every Sunday or Saturday, I'll just like sit for like half an hour quiet time and I'll just write down my thoughts. Like it's not something I do every day, but even that once a week is such a good release of thoughts because like I've worked on like meditating and breath work and like talking to friends and family and like speaking out my feelings. But so I didn't think journaling would, be any different, but it actually does make a difference. And it's so healthy to clear out your head and process those thoughts. So I do love all those ideas. And it's not something you have to do necessarily every day, maybe on demand when you need it. And I think that's the beauty of these things. And just like meditation, actually, Sakina, you were talking on your live on your Instagram channel yesterday that meditation is often misunderstood as being completely quiet and zero thoughts, but it's actually you being still so your mind can speak and so you can process those thoughts and listen to your own mind. And I really like that as well. And I can imagine that that's insanely helpful for parents when they have a million things going on. So, again, I love that you ended with the reminder that there is no such thing as perfect. It's what's important to you, raising a dynamic human. I love the idea of listing out traits that are important to both parents or however many parents are involved, and having that in the background while you raise your child. So thank you for today. And we'll work on also getting this over to Instagram, but we will be saving it on YouTube. And we hope you guys join us in 2 weeks. Thanks.